We are my favorite haunt, Ashley Reservoir, and these are Canadian geese which are not bothered by the tariffs. They've actually become almost a resident here. So, first a view of the whole environment. It's one of the most beautiful places that I know on earth, and in fall it's totally spectacular when you see the colors of the leaves. Last year I got some very beautiful pictures of the fall colors, which I will put the link to the album in the description of this video, so take a look at that and hope you enjoy that. We have here, what are these? These look like gulls. So you've got a couple of gulls, a few more in the water there. You also sometimes get river terns, which you find. We have geese who are calling because people are feeding them. Very beautiful environment. Somebody asked me a question: how do you get out of sadness? And the question was a bit more elaborate. It said that maybe somebody makes a mistake and they're feeling bad about that, and that is dominating their lives, that mistake they made. And it's the kind of, sometimes maybe they are depressed about it, sometimes they are, sort of drowning in the negativity of that. So how do you get out of that? The answer is recognize what a mistake is. I sent out a podcast yesterday which was called Pain is Feedback. Now, pain happens because of mistakes. So therefore, mistakes are also potential feedback. So mistakes, I call them, they are the grounds of learning. Mistakes are the classroom in which you learn. See how clear this water is. Absolutely, you're looking at water at stones from about a depth of about maybe 6 inches to a foot. It's absolutely clear. So mistakes are a classroom. So what should you do? What must you do if you make a mistake? The first and foremost thing to remember is that everybody makes mistakes. The wisest person you know, the most highly educated person you know, and the one who is not so educated and seems to be foolish, all make mistakes. It's only the question of how many mistakes, and the question of what do you do with the mistakes. For those who understand cricket, and I'm not one of them, but I'm using a cricket analogy, it's like saying, who is the best cricket player? There's no one on the face of the earth who plays cricket who is never bowled out, who's never run out, right? So everybody is bowled out, everybody is run out. But what makes a player great? What makes a player better than his or her compatriots? And that is what is called the run average. How many runs did they make in that particular tournament they were playing? That is what makes them, for better or worse, that's what they are, that's who they are. There are the gulls. So the best player is not the one who never gets out, because there is no such thing. The best player is the one who has the best batting average, run average. So who is the one who has the best But on average, the one who learns from the mistakes. One of my favorite mistake stories is to do with Kobe Bryant, the tremendous basketball player who tragically died. He and his daughter both died in a helicopter crash in 2020, I think it was, no, 2021. Now, Kobe was a phenomenal human being. I think he's one of those very few people who I regret not having met, and he was one of them. So my favorite Kobe story about his mistakes is that very early in his career, before he became that great champ and so on, in the college leagues, the story goes that Kobe was in this match, and in that match his team got three penalty shots. So the opposite team made a mistake, as a result of which this team got a penalty shot. And Kobe was one of their best players, and if not the best. And so he was given a chance to take those penalty shots, and obviously the hope of the team was on him. And much to his own shock and much to the shock of the team, Kobe missed all three. So that's like saying, if you want to make a mistake, make a big one. So he missed all three, not just one of them or two of them. Now the commentator, so there's commentary going on. Oh my God, what did Kobe do? Oh, how could that happen? And so on and so forth. All that is going on. And they saw at the end of the match, Kobe went off the court and sat down on a bench, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. The picture of dejection, the picture of sadness, the picture of grief. So the commentators are going, oh my God, he must be feeling so bad. He must be feeling so bad. He must be feeling terrible, devastated, and whatnot. And look at him and so. And then, of course, when he got off that and he was leaving the court, one of the commentators, or a few of them, they managed to catch him and they said, oh, you're so sorry this happened, and you must be devastated, and you must be absolutely terrible. You must be feeling terrible about this and so sad. So Kobe looks at him with a genuinely puzzled expression on his face, and he said, I was sitting there reflecting on and thinking about what went wrong. How did I manage to miss the three baskets? That's all. He said, now I know, and it will never happen again. And then he says, what does sadness have to do with that? What does sadness have to do with that? I made a mistake. I analyzed it, and now I know why I made the mistake. And so therefore I know how to avoid making that mistake. And that's it. You move on. So the question is, what is sadness? What is a mistake? And what do you do with it? What do you choose to do with it? I think this is a very, very critical thing, and really it must begin with that, which is the choice is ours. The choice of what to do is always ours. So we can choose to make the mistake, hug it close to our chests and hearts, and sit with it and revel in it and revel in the grief. And I'm saying the word revel, I'm using it deliberately because people enjoy that. They say they're miserable. They're not. They actually enjoy that grief. They will tell stories about it to themselves. There's internal talk going on in the head, which is the most powerful talk that you can possibly have, that which goes on in your head. Because that talk decides your own attitudes, and your attitudes define your success or failure. So monitor that thought your talk in the head. What you say to yourself is what you will do. And again, your choice. What do you choose to say to yourself? So here I'm not promoting, and I'm not suggesting to you that you should tell lies. That things are bad and you say, no, nothing is wrong. No, that's very stupid. So here's what you need to do when you make a mistake. And as I told you, everybody makes mistakes. First and foremost, don't talk about them. Don't advertise them. Don't tell the world about them. It wasn't nice, it isn't nice. So no need to go into the detail of the mistake. Don't advertise. But do the following. First and foremost, don't lie to yourself. The worst lies you can tell are the ones to yourself. Don't do that. Don't tell lies to yourself. You know what happened. You know the truth of that. Speak the truth to yourself. Face the situation head on. Clearly look it in the eye. No matter how ugly that might seem to be, no matter how painful, look at it in the eye. Because as I said, the purpose is to learn from it. This is your classroom. You can't learn in a classroom if you're sitting with your eyes shut, or if you're looking at watching a film on your phone or something. You must pay attention. So attention you're paying is looking at yourself in the light of the mistake and saying what actually happened. Now this is your data collection point, and GIGO principle applies: garbage in, garbage out. Your decisions will be in proportion to the honesty of your observation. So if you lie to yourself, you're going to get false results. So don't do that. Look at the mistake square in the eye and say, what did I do? That's a very important thing to remember, that like brainstorming, this is your data gathering phase. This is your own data. You're gathering your own data. But don't fall into the trap of evaluation. There will be a time in this process when you will evaluate. But now is not the time. The time when you are examining a mistake is the time to stay with that. Stay with the data gathering phase. Look at what you did. Look at what you said. Look at the circumstances around you. Look at the situation, how it was. Look at how you interpreted that situation which led to your behavior. Again, you're not evaluating. You're not saying this was good or bad. What was it? The data. I strongly recommend that at this stage you keep a notepad and pen and write things down, because writing down always clears the mind. Stick to the data. Once you have all the data, so reflect. There's a wonderful phrase from David Cobb's model of adult learning called reflective observation. So he said concrete experience, which is what actually happened. Reflective observation is where you are considering that concrete experience, no longer being in it. So after the experience is over, you're shooting baskets, you missed 3, you're now off the court. Now what are you doing? Reflective observation. Concrete experience was missing the baskets. Reflective observation is, now you're sitting down, the pose, Kobe Bryant's pose, I'm not suggesting that you need to do that, but the pose indicates single-minded concentration on what you are reflecting. He's not looking into his phone or not answering messages or not posting stuff on social media. He's not even chatting with anyone. He's not listening to music. He is focusing, complete single-minded focus on what happened. That's called reflective observation. The more integrity with which you do that, the better the results. So in this reflective observation phase, as I said, you're going to carry a notebook and you're going to write things down. What happened? In as much detail as you possibly can. Once you have that reflective observation, then, now before I go there, in the reflective observation, you will say what happened. You will also say, and everything, say, do, circumstances. Then you go to what David Cope calls abstract conceptualization. Now, abstract conceptualization is what it sounds like, which is, it is abstract. It's not what happened. Now you are thinking about that. For one of the things you might be thinking is, you should be thinking, is what were the options I had? What else could have happened? I said this and I did that, but what were the options available to me? What else could I have said? What else could I have done? And in that is, I had the choice also of saying and doing nothing. There's the blue heron. End of that. So I also had the choice of saying and doing nothing. Now, I did not exercise that choice. I said whatever I said. But had I exercised that choice, had I decided to remain silent, what were the possible consequences of that? I'm trying to focus on that blue heron. Sorry for the grainy picture, but this is a poor phone after all. There's a blue heron at the end of that. You can see there he's walking. One of the apex predators of this place. So, you say, well, what were my options? What could I have done? What else could I have done? So in this reflective observation, you're going to do all that. What you're also going to do is you look at what were the results of this mistake. What was the result on yourself? What was the result on whoever else was involved in your mistake? What was the result on other people who may not have been directly involved in that, but they are somehow connected, and so forth. So looking at all of that. And then in the abstract conceptualization, you cap it. It culminates by you coming to some decisions. And the decision is that in situations of this kind, and now this is broad, it doesn't have to be the exact set of circumstances, it probably will never be, but you are looking at lessons learned. So you're saying, given the circumstances, what would I do differently? Right? So given the circumstances, what would I do differently? That is your final abstract concept. So before I go to the final stage, very quickly, you start with the incident itself, which turned out to be a mistake, and therefore you find yourself suffering from it. You look at that in complete detail. You don't fool yourself, you don't lie to yourself, you don't try to pretend that nothing happened or whatever happened was great. You look at it clearly and you say, this stinks. And then you say, this is the reason it stinks. Abstract conceptualization, what else could I have done? How would that have made a difference? And then we come to the final one, which is active experimentation. And active experimentation is where you try out your abstract concept. And provided you did a good job with all of that, you will find your results are good. And even if you find the results are not as good as you expected, again, go down to define that data. Don't get stuck in the good and bad. Biggest problem with good and bad is that it's very subjective. It's almost entirely good is what makes me feel good, bad is what makes me feel bad, and that's about the worst thing that you can think of. Sitting and eating a triple chocolate sundae is among the greatest experiences of life. Is it good? Think about that. Maybe one sundae is fine, but doing that every time, I don't need to answer that, right? Working out in the gym, especially weights, does it feel good? Depends on what time of your career you're doing that. If you are used to doing that, yes, it feels good. But if you're not used to doing that, the most painful experience. But is it good? Yes, it is good. So you must give data to yourself. Don't say, oh, this feels good. No, feeling is immaterial. Reading a book that you need to read doesn't feel good. Listening to a lecture on a serious subject doesn't feel good. If you are at the stage where these things are feeling good to you, then alhamdulillah, thank Allah, thank yourself, and say that you are really, you leverage yourself out of the vast majority of the population, because for most people, good and bad is purely related to feelings. So give yourself data to say what makes it good, and then try it out. Repeat the process. Concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, active experimentation. Repeat the process. This is what you must do with mistakes. So now think about this. What happens to you? What happens to you is very simple. It's very curative. It's very therapeutic. What happens to you is you get out of your malaise of moaning and groaning and out of your malaise of complaining. Nothing to complain. Here was a mistake. It was my classroom. My learning point. I learned. I move on. Because there is no positive thing, result, no benefit from sitting and reveling and sitting and thinking and moaning and groaning about mistakes. Nothing positive. It's negative, takes you energy, makes you gives you bad feeling, and you learn nothing because you are too busy feeling bad. Being too busy feeling good and being too busy feeling bad are both bad for you. Being too busy feeling bad is worse because it also takes away energy. So don't do that. Move out, move on. And alhamdulillah, you end up gaining some wisdom. And believe me, there's no mistake in the world which gives you less wisdom than you would have got by not making that mistake. Here are two geese in full flight. Where are they? Geese are the greatest chatterers in the world. They talk all the time. There you go. So, don't make making mistakes into a career option. You make mistakes when you make mistakes. You don't go around trying to make mistakes. But if it happens, not only is it not the end of the world, it is something which is potentially hugely beneficial if you allow that to happen. All the best. Make mistakes, learn from them, and move on.